Hello, welcome back again. Another live stream. I bet you never thought I would do a topic on this particular area, though you don't usually see this on YouTube. You don't see player guides on high-level Dungeons and Dragons. Usually you see a video that's targeted at dungeon masters primarily, and players really don't have any part to play whatsoever. But that's not the case for today. This is very much targeted at players, and certainly dungeon masters will still benefit from it. But that was my intention. The focus would be players to help you get in the right mindset for high-level play. So for those of you who are wondering how this all works, I'm going to present a lot of stuff. I'm going to run a poll right now, and I'm going to open it up to questions and answers at the end of my presentation. And that's what the plan is for today. So feel free to participate if you want to, or just watch and sit back and see what goes on, okay? Now, grab some food, some drink, make sure you are comfortable, make sure that you're ready for quite a lot of information. I was trying to figure out how to squeeze in enough information to make it work. Hi Rivers, how's it going? Okay, so if you're comfortable, if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's make this work. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And yes, we're going right towards the epic play stuff. That's right, this is a player guide for high-level Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Now, I know you're all wondering, like, what's going on here? Usually it's for a dungeon master. Why would there be a guide for players? Well, guess what? I'm going to explain all of that. That's why I'm doing the video in the first place. And the fact is that players do need some guidance around this. Otherwise, I mean, what are you doing? So here is this video for that very purpose, to actually help fill that out for those of you who really are interested in playing at the high end of the game rather than at the lower end of the game. This is primarily, as I said, a guide for players playing a character rather than a dungeon master, but even though it's a guide for players, it still requires dungeon master approval. You're going to have to get some sort of approval from your dungeon master. Now, how does this work? You're going to do this after everyone explores what they think high-level games look like at their table. That means that the players, the dungeon master, sit down and say, look, we want to play beyond level 10, because most games tend to finish about from level 1 to 10, somewhere in that bracket. But we want to play beyond that, level 11 and higher. How do we make that work? That's a discussion that players and dungeon masters have to have. And most tables don't have that discussion. In fact, that never comes up. Instead, we get the usual, somebody decides, well, I'm going to give it a go. I'm a dungeon master. They watch some videos or look on the internet and read a few books, and they think, well, we're all good, but we're not. So why am I saying this is a player guide? Well, because players do most of the initial work with a campaign beyond level 10, not the dungeon master. I know that sounds strange. I know you're all like, what are you talking about? But there's a point when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons that you have to stop being the vagabonds or wanderers who do good, do quests, kill monsters, and collect treasure. That's low-level play. That's really the basic framework and paradigm for low-level play. High-level play is not like that. Your characters are initiating stuff. They are doing things. Their impact on the world is so significant now that you can't sort of ignore them. So that means they will be making decisions before dungeon masters drop anything in front of them. Okay, your character will be making decisions. That means that the players need to really be on their game. It is not good enough to just have somebody who understands how to run high-level games. There are too many occasions where people who are a dungeon master sit down and they have every intention of running a high-level game, and only to find once they start doing this that the players aren't on the same page. They don't understand how to do this, and the reason is because high-level play is actually not in the player's handbook. Forget about all that stuff in the character classes. Okay, in the character building stuff, none of that is useful to you for high level play. It's actually rubbish. Okay, I'll explain to you why. You'll understand once we get there. So, they don't have any information. It's only the Dungeon Masters who are looking in the Dungeon Master Guide and looking at videos that talk about high level play or on the internet that know anything about what they need to kind of do. Your players don't know this, okay? So therefore, it never seemed to work. There's so many people who try this and it falls apart. So yes, this is where your players, your player characters are setting the goals. They are creating quests for the Dungeon Master. They are arranging protection for their strongholds if they have a stronghold or a business. They're selecting villains to foil or take out. There'll be villains within the campaign world that will probably still exist, and they will be selecting them as targets. Now, whether they are to be negotiated with or killed or defeated in some way is beside the point, but that's how kind of it works at high level. You're dealing with your personal nemesis. A player character is going to have a personal nemesis. In fact, every single character may have one. In fact, it's probably better if they do. And who's going to help with that? Yes, the Dungeon Master will, but players need to do a lot of the work too. You're going to be saving the world or the kingdom or the multiverse. Probably at a much higher level play, you'll be saving the multiverse from some calamity. You're driving the story, okay? And the Dungeon Master is following your lead. Now, I know this sounds bizarre, and I know a few Dungeon Masters who are watching this will be sort of like going, oh my God, what is he saying? Seriously, that's what high-level play's like. It really is. Now, I'm sure there are other Dungeon Masters out there who run the game differently and other players who play differently, but really this is how historically high-level Dungeons & Dragons has been played. Historically, Dungeons & Dragons character sheets actually had, well, not the character sheet, but the character classes had features built into them for top tier games, like to help the player understand what they needed to do next. Okay, they were literally there. Now, they have been removed from the game for decades. They have not existed for decades. They were taken out at some point. I believe Wizards of the Coast removed a lot of those concepts when they took over the company. They did exist during the TSR years, but they don't exist now. So therefore, modern players of Dungeons & Dragons don't really know how to deal with high-level play. There are people out there who are still playing at level 20 or beyond, and they've been doing it for years. There are not a lot of people, but there are people out there who do this, okay? I want players to focus on asking for character class features that make sense for high-level games, okay, in a Dungeons & Dragons 5e environment. We are still talking about a modern game, so there are some slight differences, so we're going to have to adjust things a little bit, okay? And I'm going to present you with a lot of different ideas to help you do that, because you're going to have a discussion with your Dungeon Master about what we can do and what we can't do and what they're able to deal with and what they can't deal with, okay? I suggest, and I know this sounds radical, I suggest dumping the existing high-level features from level 11 through to 20, or don't change anything and just include everything that I'm talking about now, okay? Use the stuff that I'm going to discuss, and I have kind of I've put in different levels where I think it would be appropriate based on the guidelines in the Dungeon Master Guide about like what sort of things are you doing with your character at that particular point, okay? There is some guidance around that. It's not a lot. It's like less than a page. It's very, very small, okay? But there is some. So based on that, we're going to build into this. Now, if you don't like the idea that all of your level 11 to 20 features suddenly disappear and you're replaced with something else, then fine. Keep them and just overlay what I'm about to talk about, okay? These are recommendations. I want to make it clear now. These are recommendations for negotiating with your Dungeon Master. They're not set in stone in any way whatsoever. They are a jumping off point for negotiations. So change what you need to change to get your high level campaign going, rather than like, no, I want this, and the Dungeon Master's like, it's not going to happen, and you never get to play at high level. But the idea is to try to get you to the point where you can play at high level without going and just playing Dungeons & Dragons Adventurers League, which really isn't... I mean, you can play high-level characters, but you're not really playing a high-level campaign. Dungeons & Dragons Adventurers League Dungeon Masters kind of have to do what they're told. And that's sort of the deal, unfortunately. Okay, so here we go. For those of you who are looking to really build this out, let's start at the first point that we need to contend with. Player characters are masters of the realm at level 11 through to 16, with a formidable reputation that makes them famous. You are famous now. From level 11 to 16, you may have been kind of famous before, more than likely, but you are formidable and famous, okay? And you are now attracting powerful foes who threaten the world or kingdom. That means you are the target. That means every time there's a quest to do something or a task to be done in this world, the chances are they're not after somebody else, they're after you, okay? Or one of your party members. You guys are the target. Nobody else, you. You've become so powerful, you are a threat to the establishment, you are a threat to the powers that be in the darkness that are trying to take over the world. You are the target. Okay, now based on this, there are probably about 3 things we want to do. It's kind of 4 maybe. I'm going to say 3 that we want to try to achieve between level 11 to level 16. And that is building out your contacts, because that's really important in a kingdom or a world. You need to have more contacts and more resources to deal with that. Then you need to deal with the fact that because you're famous, you're going to attract followers. You don't have to do very much because you've already done that, okay? You've already spread the word of what you've done is already spread, so followers are coming in. And then there's land titles. That means somebody's going to decide, and probably a powerful entity, to avoid you becoming a competitor and causing them trouble. It's better to get you on board because you've become so powerful and you've got a lot of followers, people who are interested in you. So rather than you winding up raising an army and attacking their kingdom, the best thing to do is to get you on board. So they're going to probably give you a title, they're going to give you land, you may get a stronghold or a business or something like that. And the idea behind this is to stop you becoming, basically, it's better to have an ally rather than a foe. Okay, this is what high-level games are like, and there's always a story element to all of this. I know what you're thinking. A lot of people are like, that doesn't sound like the game for me. Seriously, if you go right back to how Dungeons & Dragons used to be played, this is what they used to do. Okay, so let's start off with the first thing. Your character is invited to a guild because you are an expert in your field that grants additional resources at level 11. Now, forget about the numbers. Look, I said level 11, but I think this is probably a good time to start this process, and it will continue. It doesn't have to be set concrete. Okay, so what are the benefits of being in a guild, and what are the requirements as a player of a character from you if you join a guild? And what are some of the issues you will have or you need to discuss with your dungeon master about how that's going to work? Well, things that guilds can do. And this won't apply, everything I talk about doesn't apply to every single guild, okay? Some of it will apply to some of the guilds, and other aspects won't apply to other guilds. So you've got to pick and choose the ones that make sense, which is why I say have a discussion with your dungeon master. A way to buy black market items and goods, okay? Often, if you join the right guild, they will have access to a black market to things that you can't normally buy openly in the public. And now these items don't necessarily mean magic items. I just mean black market items and goods. A workshop space to make stuff depending on the type of guild. So if the guild is a blacksmithing guild, or you're dealing with a guild which is like, you know, for paladins and fighters and so forth, they may very well have a metalwork workshop where you can, or a forge, where you can use it and create stuff. You might need to provide materials, but you have a space to work in now. You don't have to just go down to the local forge or smithy and pay them to use their forge for a while, only for them to say, I'm sorry, but guess what? I have my business to run and I just don't have time for you to come and make your own armor or fix your sword or stuff like that. Maybe that's, whatever it might be. So access to a forge, it might be a different type of workshop. It might be a carpentry workshop. It could be for dealing with alchemical components. Okay, it could be a laboratory of some kind. It's not necessarily a workshop. There's lots of different types. Okay. Contacts with political, religious, criminal, and powerful individuals that can help the character. Having the right information is really important. And guilds do a really good job of giving you that information, because there'll be members within the guild who can get you access to those aspects. Not every aspect. It's not like every guild has criminal contacts. But some guilds will. If you're part of a rogues guild or a thieves guild, then yes, criminal contacts would be a thing. Now, if you're a cleric or a paladin and you're part of a guild, then maybe, particularly if it's a religious guild of some kind, then, or a priestly guild of some kind, then what you're dealing with is probably religious contacts, people who have a religious focus. And these are all discussions, again, that you all have with your dungeon master. A guild provides the opportunity for employment and jobs to generate an income for your character. So this is not just like day-to-day stuff, but this might be big jobs where there's a big payout. A lot of effort has to go into it. A quest might have to be done. A particular job might need to be done. Whatever it might be, but there's a payout for it. This is the sort of thing that a guild will do. Now, there's another aspect, and that's particularly with the spell casting and the knowledge-based classes, like your bards and your wizards. I mean, I would even say sorcerers and warlocks fall into this, even your cleric. So something like a library or an archive full of books and manuscripts and so forth. The idea is that you're trying to collect information for conducting research. So when you are given a task or you have something in mind and you need to do some research, this is where you're going to go get a lot of your information. It won't have everything you need, but it will have a fair amount of it. It's also a guild. At this point, if you're being invited to join as a member, there's places for you to stay. Like free board, food, and drink will probably be a standard in a guild. Now, it sounds like you're getting a lot. So don't freak out, because just because you get a lot in a guild, and it doesn't have to be all of this, doesn't mean there aren't some things you have to do as a player, okay, playing a character. A safe house to hide or protect the character for some classes. So if you're dealing with a rogue who's in a thieves guild, they might have a safe house or a place to hide you. Even a warlock might have something like that, depending on the type of guild that they have joined. So this is really useful when you start doing things that get you into trouble and you need somewhere to go so you can't be found, so you have time to prepare or heal up or recover from something, or just have time to think about what to do next, okay? A safe house. There's potential allies that can offer a wide range of assistance. And the gambit it's not just combat, okay? It's going to be exploration, research, it's going to be information collection, getting you into places without having to fight your way in or sneak into a place. You don't have to infiltrate your way into every single thing. You might be able to get an invite to a ball so you can go and talk to somebody who normally you wouldn't be able to get access to, okay? Because they don't want you there, or it's basically a place or a gathering that is reserved for the elite, and maybe it's a specific elite. It might even be a secret meeting of some kind. So allies is very important. Access to specialized tools that are related to the guild's business. Now, probably one of the most common things to talk about is your kits. Now, a lot of your kits are available for purchase at a general store, right? But there's always that, well, what about thieves' tools? Can you just go down to a general store and buy thieves' tools? Wouldn't a lot of people be sort of suspicious? He's bought thieves' tools. So is he going to go and burgle somebody? Is he going to go and break into somebody's house by picking their lock and stealing their stuff? So you might decide that a guild is the place where you're going to buy something as specialized as thieves' tools. Unless, of course, they're making their own thieves' tools. And this, again, falls back on the workshop. You can do a lot of things. So that's just one example there. Specialized tools. Possibly some access to magic shops or markets for buying magic items for full spellcasters. Now, why do I say specify full spellcasters? Because probably that's where they would be. Now, your dungeon master might decide that their campaign it does not have magic shops, or a magic market. There's no auctions or hidden auctions that sell magic items that you can go and partake in. Okay, but it's a negotiation and a discussion that you can have. This is probably the one area that you're going to find the most resistance to with the dungeon master, because of the very nature that magic items simply make your character even more powerful, and your character is very powerful even without any magic items. So, but still a discussion. Now, who makes magic items? Spellcasters do, which is why I'm suggesting it's probably not the martial classes that have guilds that revolve around buying that sort of stuff. Characters are going to have to do some stuff. You get all this stuff, okay, and you will have to do some things, and your dungeon master is probably going to make it quite clear to you, if you decide I want to be part of a guild, that you're going to have to do some homework. You might have to do some work outside of just doing what you like to do, which is getting drunk and going exploring ruins and temples and dungeons and killing monsters and stealing their stuff. Well, yes, what is that? What do I have to do? Characters are going to be required to take on an apprentice. It's quite common with a guild that there are students and apprentices, and the only way to make sure that an apprentice actually gets trained up is to have somebody who's an expert train them. You're the expert, you're training an apprentice. You get one apprentice who can perform simple tasks. It's not like you drag them into combat, because if you get your apprentice killed, you're probably not going to get another one, and then the guild has got to start making the decision, and the dungeon master is going to be thinking this way, about whether they want to still keep you. Like, is your reputation for being too reckless not worth having you around, okay? But you might also be asked to teach your trade to guild students. The guild might have a number of students who are training up, not full members, don't have full access to all of these benefits, but they're trying to train up people in their field. This is very, very common, and so you are now the teacher. You're the lecturer, and you will have to show up at least once a week to do this sort of thing. Or you might have to apply for leave so that you can go off and do other things and then come back and you got to teach. Now, how much you do that, again, a discussion you have with your dungeon master. Now, one of the things that is really important at high level play, particularly between level 11 and 16, is moving and transport, traveling around. Now, you can obviously just go buy your own mount, but at this point, I would say, particularly if you're a guild member, that you could probably say, look, is there a chance that I get a land traveling mount that is stabled and fed by the guild? I think guilds would actually stable and feed a mount for a guild member. I think that's something you could ask for, with possibly access to a flying mount at level 15. Now, why do I say level 15? Because at level 15, it really doesn't matter if you're on a flying mount. Considering how the game is built and spells work and features work, at level 15, really, dungeon masters are already having to deal with things flying around. So you on a flying mount is not a big deal. Now, remember with a mount that you might find that if you get your mount killed, the guild does not want to give you another one. So deciding to take your mount into combat, not a great idea, okay? It's not the dungeon master's fault if your mount dies and you fall to your death and go splat. It makes perfect sense that the enemy will target your mount first, kill it, so that you wind up falling to your death. It is not the dungeon master's fault. You did that. Use your mount as a way of transporting yourself and your character from one place to another quickly. It's also an opportunity for you to build more story relationships They don't have to take up a lot of time, okay? It is really just a mode of transport. That's what the purpose of a mount is. And it's been around a long time, but yes, this is at that time where you don't have to fork over the cost. A guild will provide these benefits, provided a character performs specific required duties. There may be a variety of different things that they require from you. Favours, you might have to perform a few favours to continue getting the guild membership benefits. And you may have to support the guild when they have to deal with a war or a conflict with a rival faction. Now, this is the story element. This is all of the stuff you get. But this is where the story is actually going now. When you join a guild, the chances are there are going to be political complications, commerce and trade complications, and because that's going on, this is the stories that you present to your dungeon master, and Dungeon Master builds the story around the fact that there is a conflict with your guild and somebody else, some other faction. Now, whether the task is to go and get something for your guild that will allow them to become more prominent and more powerful, or important materials that they require, or to deal with a rival who is planning to foil them, it doesn't matter. There's lots of different story elements. So there is a story element to all of this. When you're dealing with a guild, you get a lot of stuff. I know this is taking me a long time to discuss and talk about people. The guild stuff is probably by far some of the largest and most extensive stuff that I need to talk about. So that's why I'm taking my time and giving you as much information as I possibly can. Thank you, Foggy Bacon, for the super chat. I do appreciate the $5. I really do. Okay, so that's factions. Let's move on to the next thing, because I said there was about 3 different things that we needed to talk about between level 11 and level 16. Loyal followers. Loyal followers seek to serve the famous character for no payment. They don't pay. You don't have to pay them anything. They just want to be in your service. They want to be around you, okay? But they'll do that provided you give them time to make an income in their trade at level 13. I'm going to suggest level 13. By the time you've dealt with everything that's going on with the guilds at level 11, and whatever else the Dungeon Master decides might be appropriate considering your party makeup and your character, then we're dealing with followers. These followers, they're not paid. They're not hirelings. You don't have to go and pay for them. They come to you, okay? So they want to be in your service. But if you don't give them time to actually look after themselves, they can't eat. They can't survive. So it's not like you can just take them off to do quests and so forth all the time, because they're not always available. They're doing other things. Now, if you have enough money to pay for their services all the time, that's a different kettle of fish. So if you've got enough money coming in that you can pay for them to assist you all the time, great. Now, I'm going to go over this, but I want to say this right now. Every time I talk about followers, not everybody, that's not true. When I talk about followers, there are some players and some dungeon masters who assume that followers travel with the adventuring party or with the character all the time, and that they will be going into battle or combat with them. If you expect that to happen, you'll never get to play at high level. As a player, dungeon masters do not want to deal with that level of complexity. It is too hard to manage. So if you insist on dragging your followers into every battle, then it won't work. The other thing is that followers are not as powerful as you. Some games, depending on the group, they are. But generally, followers are significantly less powerful than the player character. You have to look after them. So let's talk about what sort of followers you might have, and you'll start to get a better idea of what I mean by followers. This could be a priest, an acolyte, a soldier, a mage, yes, a mage, knights, guards, spies, scouts, thieves, cultists. Yes, for those of you who are a warlock, you can have your own cultists. Cultist fanatics, monks, thugs, musicians. If you're a bard, musicians makes a lot of sense. Actors, performers, bandits, bandit captains. That's right, there's going to be a captain for those bandits as well. Druids, witches, veterans, veteran fighters, warriors, tribal warriors. And then we're moving into something like berserkers and clerics, and the list goes on. I have just given you a whole bunch of ideas about what type of followers you might get at this level of play, okay? Now, I'm going to give you some dice numbers. Now, normally, one of the things that frustrates me with high-level character class construction is there are a lot of dice mechanics, a lot of mechanics around combat and nothing else. And actually, it's like, it's a bit of a joke. At high level, it's really unnecessary. And it's not the stuff you really need, okay? This is why we're talking about this stuff. I'm going to explain to you why you need followers. And it'll become more clear as we go on, because that followers will keep coming up. So this is just a guide. It is based on older versions of the game with some adjustments to sort of fit in with what I think you guys will be able to digest. And the fact that you're playing a modern game, and it probably make it a little bit easier. So this is what I'm going to suggest to you. Martial classes. Okay, so that is your barbarian, your monk, your fighter, your paladin, your ranger. Have I missed anybody? Did I say the monk? So all of your martial classes that fall into that bracket. 4d6. So 6-sided dice, and you get 4 of them. 4 6-sided dice of followers. And none of them will have any spell casting abilities. Okay? Now, it's not set in concrete. You can negotiate with your dungeon master. These things can change. Okay? Don't get caught up in them. But I'm going to suggest for full spellcasters that they only get 2d6, 2 6-sided dice worth of followers. And they will have spellcasting abilities. Now, why less for a full spellcaster? Because they're getting spellcasters. Spellcasters have just more versatility, that is significantly more powerful than anybody who doesn't have those sorts of things. Okay? So this is the reason why I've suggested that you give martial classes, who often struggle to keep up with spellcasters at higher level, more followers, and that you give spellcasters less followers. Now, where did this idea come from? This came from my group, my home group. And I had to agree. I was like, okay, yeah, I agree. Now, although the numbers were different when we discussed it, I have adjusted things a little bit. Again, all of this is negotiation with your Dungeon Master. And if you look at page 92 and 94 of the Dungeon Master Guide, if you're a player, you might have it for the magic items. So we'll look at that section, and it talks about followers and how they kind of work. Won't give you everything, because your Dungeon Master will change some stuff. Okay, so what is the deal with followers? Because they play such an intricate and important aspect and role in your game now. So loyal followers are much weaker than your character, as I said, and they can't be replaced if they die. The chances are your Dungeon Master, if you try to use your followers like red shirts and throw them into combat and they're dying in droves, they're not going to give you more followers. Now, why is that? Is that because the Dungeon Master is being a dick? Or is that because your reputation is so bad now that nobody wants to be involved with you? The follower, their family found out what happened. Their family, the follower that's died because of your leadership, has passed on all their information. Oh, okay. And then somebody's going to say, I'm going to go, if the follower dies, I'm going to go and kill all their family so nobody can hear it. It's still going to leak out. Okay? That's the reality. Nothing is going to be hidden. You are going to wind up getting bad reputation, which is why you can't replace followers. People don't want to follow somebody when the people underneath them perish and die. It's bad management. So as a player, make sure you are a good leader, a good manager and leader for your followers, because you don't get any more. You may have to pay people to follow you. That's not the same. Followers are much more loyal and much more useful, and they can do a lot more for you. So don't be a careless leader, because that can spread throughout the realm. But you could potentially, depending on your Dungeon Master, raise your follower from death. if they die for whatever reason, if the spell, if the party, the adventuring party, has the right types of spells, don't expect the dungeon master to provide an NPC, but if you have the right sort of spells within your party, you could bring them back to life. I think that's pretty legit. I would certainly pursue that and suggest that to your dungeon master. Now, there's another aspect to this that we need to focus on that I haven't talked about, and that is followers are primarily there to perform duties for the character outside of combat. Primarily, that is what their duty is. It is not to follow them around and wind up turning your adventuring party of 4 members into 20 members, because you're never going to get to play that game. Dungeon masters won't tolerate that. So don't scare them off. Don't do that, okay? But they can be taken into battle, okay? And they can travel with the adventuring party at the dungeon master's discretion. So if your party is down a few members, maybe you take a few followers with you. But bear in mind, followers are going to be playing at much higher level than they probably should be. You know, if you've only got a follower who's got a challenge rating or a level 2 or 3 to it, and you are level 13, they are probably not going to survive anything that's thrown at them. They're going to have to be hiding behind cover the whole time. Their duty is going to be very, very, very basic. What do followers actually do in your game? They hold your mount or horses. They look after your mount and horses when you go into the dungeon. Okay? If you have spellcasters that cast healing spells, they'll be waiting when you come out of a dangerous location to heal you up because you ran out of spells to do that. That's what followers do. What do followers do? They find out information for you that you don't have time to do. So they can do a lot of research for you. Again, all of this is, you're going to have to talk to your dungeon master about it. What else do followers do? Followers are going to be looking after strongholds. They're going to be looking after vehicles that you might possess. They're going to be doing other duties that revolve around finding stuff that you want to find. They might actually be conducting their own quests. Low level is probably, and low risk is probably the smart way to go, but they'll be doing their own stuff, and it's going to become more clear as we go through here what they're doing, okay? So my suggestion, and I want to say this really right now to all players, please, when you start talking about followers with your dungeon master, make it clear that you're not going to try and insist on dragging them into combat, because as soon as you do that, you're never going to play that game. You're never going to play that game. And followers are so helpful and so useful in so many different ways. So don't think of them as a combat utility. It is much better to hire somebody to come into combat, okay, rather than to take your followers with you, which are too valuable. All right, now let's talk about what we're really driving towards. This is the like the capstone for that tier of play, and that is the character is granted a title and land with a stronghold on it, or a business by a powerful, wealthy sponsor, or even a monarch. And when does this happen? I'm going to suggest it's probably going to happen very, very quickly after you wind up with a whole lot of followers. Level 14, I'm going to suggest level 14. Okay, now why am I suggesting at this point? I'm suggesting that we need to have a staggered progression to what makes sense in terms of developing a character. And this is why I'm saying level 14 here, based on whatever else we've talked about already, okay? So what does this stronghold look like, or this business in this land? How does this work? This is just the basics. Again, a discussion with your dungeon master to sell the idea. So you get a title. You might be a lord, you might be a duke, you might just get a knighthood. There's a lot of different things it could be, okay? You might find you're a duchess. If you're playing a female character, you could be a duchess. There's lots of different titles that you could pick up, depending on the world that you're in, okay? The one I would, even a baron. So when you present this idea, talk to your dungeon master about what types of monarch exists in the kingdom, what sort of titles or powerful people, what that infrastructure looks like, and see if you can get yourself a title and some land to put a stronghold or business on. Okay, because this is quite common. Why do monarchs and wealthy sponsors do this? It's again because you are so powerful, you've got so many people following you. The last thing they need, monarchs do not want you to have a whole lot of followers that will suddenly wind up turning into an army that will then wind up displacing them. If they are doing a bad job, it is much better to bring your player character into the fold of a nobility and wealth, so that you are part of the club, rather than you winding up being a rival. Okay, if they give you land and a title and a way of making income based off the land they've given you, if they give you these things, then they'll be inviting you to meetings, and they'll have an opportunity to build a relationship with you, which means the chances are you're likely not going to go to war with them. Okay, even if they're doing things that you don't particularly like, as you know, when you're playing your character. So what would you get? A small castle maybe, or a large castle, a mansion, a tavern. Maybe you decide, I don't want a stronghold, I would much prefer to have just a big tavern. A blacksmith, if that's the sort of thing that you want to sort of focus on. You might have a temple that you look after, or a university where you teach people, an inn where people stay. It could be something as simple as an abbey for a cleric. Yep, or even a paladin might have an abbey. You could have a shop. There are a variety of different shops that you might have on your land. A trading post. A hunting lodge. Say a ranger would have a hunting lodge. A shrine. Again, we're working back towards, I guess, potentially your bard and your cleric. But, you know, a shrine might even be useful for a warlock. A circus. Look, I've put down circus because there's nothing more fun than having a circus. Okay, a travelling circus for a bard is like awesome. A theatre where people put on shows. It might be a mage tower if you are a spellcaster, a wizard, a warlock, sorcerer. Okay, you have a mage tower. Even a bard could have a mage tower. A fortress, if you decide that would be more appropriate, something a bit more beefy. Particularly a fortress that has a key role. It is in a strategic location within the world, and it is constantly under attack, and we need somebody who's capable to protect it and look after it and manage it, and you're it. A palace, depending again on the type of world you're in. A guild hall. You could even have your own guild at this point. And a farm, for those of you who want to keep it very, very that's just an example of all the sorts of things you might have as a stronghold or a business on your land. And the list can go on. So, the character has peasants. So, the land that you have, okay, your stronghold doesn't take up all the land. The land that you are given is probably quite extensive, and there'll be other people living on your land, which means that because they're living on your land, they'll have to pay you tax. This is how feudal systems work, and you'll probably be applying the same sort of concepts, okay? And even our modern world works this way. You'll be applying this to your fantasy world. So peasants, okay, all people are going to be living on your land. They generate income for your stronghold and your business, okay, and for you ultimately. And so they're paying taxes. Now, how do you work out how much tax you should get? Well, the Dungeon Master Guide is not hugely useful, although you could look at the section on running a business and maintenance costs for strongholds and so forth. That's on page 127 through to 129 of the Dungeon Master Guide. But this is what I'm going to suggest to you, okay? And this would certainly apply, I would say, in a medieval fantasy setting. And that is, your character receives a quarter of a monthly, so take a quarter of the monthly maintenance cost, and that is your profit, okay? Which is collected by, guess who? Your followers. Your followers are your tax collectors, okay? That's why you need to make sure you don't let them die, because they're going to be collecting income for you later on. They are the ones you can trust. Hiring somebody to do it, you just don't know what's going to happen. But followers are loyal, okay? And please, Dungeon Masters, do not screw with your players' followers. Don't put in a poison pill in there. It's always a bad thing It certainly causes drama and conflict, which is part of making stories, but it really will undermine the player's confidence in using their followers for anything. Okay, now, when you take your stronghold or your business and you look at the maintenance cost for it, I want you to assume that the maintenance cost is always covered by the income collected by your taxes. And the actual profit at the end, once all the maintenance costs are paid for that month, is 1/4 of the maintenance cost, which is about 25%, which is not actually unreasonable. I mean, this day and age, and probably in the past, expecting a turnover of about 25% to 30% is quite normal. Okay? So I've just made that number up. It doesn't need to be set in concrete. Okay? It's not there as like, this is how it works, and it's in a book. Sorry, I just need to drink, otherwise I will lose my voice. So, now that you have a title and land and a stronghold and peasants to look after, or people on your land who live there, the character must protect those peasants on their land, or you run the risk of losing your title, losing the land deed, losing your stronghold, and losing the business that was given to you. Now, this doesn't stop players from buying their own land if they have enough money, buying their own business, and buying their own stronghold. In that case, it's a very different kettle of fish. But when you're dealing with somebody giving you something to perform a duty, the reason they're giving you a title, land, and a stronghold or a business is to ensure that you look after those people on that land. That's how it works, okay? So as a player, you need to understand that. That's what you need to be doing. Please remember, that is absolutely important. It's not good enough to decide, okay, if somebody attacks my the peasants or people on my land, I'm going to do nothing about it. No, you can't. This is the story aspect at this point, right here, okay? This is where we start looking at, okay, so what is going on? The story is going to revolve around protecting your stronghold, dealing with conflicts that are much larger than just going down into a temple, a ruin, or a dungeon, where it's probably a lot of open warfare will be taking place. You don't have to do the whole open warfare thing. You can take segments of that, okay? But protecting your stronghold or castle, this is the story. Protecting the land and the people around it, that is the story. That is the story you present to your dungeon master. That's the story that you want. That's the story that people have been pursuing. That is the first major aspect of high-level play. It is the capstone for that tier of play from level 11 to 16, is looking after strongholds. There's a reason why Matt Colville's Strongholds and Followers is so popular. It is because it is based on older versions of Dungeons & Dragons who understood this is what you do. Okay? So this is why I'm presenting it to you. Okay, let's talk about the top end. We've got to go beyond this, right? We've got to go a bit further. So, players' characters are masters of the worlds, not just the one world, but many worlds or multiverse at level 17 and 20. Okay, not all campaigns need to go that far. You may decide that this is too far to go. I'm happy with the other thing. The stronghold stuff is great. Looking after the people, great, awesome. But I don't want to go this far because we're really going into traveling the multiverse. Okay, so you have become legend, not just famous, but you're a legend. And you battle demons and devils, titans, liches, archmages, ancient dragons, and the avatars of the gods. Okay? And to do so, and why you do it, is because there's always an attempt to take control of the planes, all different planes. And so you're going to get caught up in all of this. There are some basic things you need at this level of play, okay? And I'm going to talk about them very, very quickly as best I can, but they are really super important to have them, otherwise it doesn't work. If you rely on just casting spells, it really doesn't work that well, and it won't be nearly as much fun as it could be, okay? So, because you're now looking after a much wider area, there are some basic things, and mobility is key. It is not combat features. It is mobility. It's the ability to travel from one world to another. So your character can travel the world, it could be one world, or the multiverse quickly, much more quickly than before, with a specialized vehicle, maybe a beast or mount, or even a magic item. Now, this might be gifted to you by a deity or powerful entity. It doesn't have to be a god or a deity. It could be just a powerful entity. Otherwise, this particular vehicle, beast, or magic item is going to be built, stolen, captured, or found by your followers. Again, we're going back to followers. This is why you need to have them, because you won't necessarily have time to do all of this yourself, but maybe you will. And you're going to do that at level 17. Level 17, right, just as we begin, you need to be able to travel the multiverse. So you need to have some way of doing that. And if you are relying on spells, that's great, but this is far more interesting. And this is the sort of stuff that people include in high-level games. This is where it actually makes sense, okay? So what does that look like? Well, that means sailing ships, galleys, warships can be selected by, I would say, probably any class for ocean voyages. Does that mean that you can't get a sailing ship, a galley, or a warship before level 17? No. But it's at this point that you will probably have so much money coming in, and you'll be so famous, and your followers will be in a position to get the things that you need and want, and sailing ships, galleys, and a warship is certainly an aspect to that. What about a ring of gate? You can use the ring to use the gate spell as many times as you like. I would apply this to divine casters or to classes that actually have access to that spell. But a magic item that allows you to do that, super useful for traveling the multiverse. What makes sense for some of the other classes? Well, an exotic mount capable of surviving combat. This is the only time that I'm going to suggest that you have a mount that is capable of surviving battle, that you take into battle with you. Again, you need sign off by your dungeon master. Who would be appropriate in terms of classes? I'm going to say the barbarian, the druid, and the ranger. The ranger actually used to get a specialized exotic mount in older versions of the game, if you were unaware. Okay. What about a spelljammer ship, or an airship, or a flying ship of some kind? And what classes would be suitable for this? You could say that could be any class, but I'm actually going to specify only 4 classes, primarily because they tend to get left behind by spellcasters who can just cast spells and travel to different worlds anyway. And then I was going to say the fighter. They have far more followers, monks, rogues, okay, and paladins. They have far more followers. They're much more likely to have followers who can build this sort of stuff for them, okay, or at least oversee the construction of it. Your follower, you might only have one follower whose prime job is to oversee the construction of this vehicle. A submarine that travels underwater, okay? If you want to go submerge yourself and have an underwater campaign, a submarine, I would make that available to any of the classes, okay? Any of the classes could get access to that. Now, what about a plane shifting ring? Now, if we're traveling to different planes, I know Gate is sort of kind of like this, but I'm targeting the plane shifting ring towards bards, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. The ability, we'll talk about Doctor Strange. Essentially, we're talking about Doctor Strange and his ring and his ability to travel from one world to another whenever he likes. It actually makes sense at this level to be able to do that quite often, rather than to just cast a spell and that is it. Okay. Now, there's one last thing I want to discuss, and usually dungeon masters wig out when you start talking about time travel. But we're going to talk about time travel because at high-end play, time travel is possible, and it's going to happen at some point for sure. Big Kid, hello, Big Kid. Thank you for the super chat of $10. Love this topic. What's that? Ideal? Topic idea. My sword Bard is opening a fighting arena. Yes, an arena would be a great idea. Absolutely. A fighting arena would be a great idea. Now, let's talk about time machines because we need to talk about it. A time machine, a device, a relic, even a tree. A time-traveling tree. I would make that available to bards, clerics, druids, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Okay? Basically, all of your major spellcasters, and it should always be at Dungeon Master discretion. And please don't push the issue with regard to time traveling, because some Dungeon Masters will find that just too hard to deal with. And the reason is because it is often too hard to deal with, okay? Time travel is really, really tricky. It really complicates things. And, if you do not want your Dungeon Master's head to pop off, okay? Or for them to lose it, or to decide, nah, I don't want to continue running a high-level game. What we do as a player is we do the things that will ensure our Dungeon Master gets the tools and is still invested in running that high-level game for us, okay? So, a time-traveling tree for a druid. Oh yeah, okay. Bards and clerics, absolutely, a relic that would do that. A time machine or a device for a warlock or a wizard. Even a sorcerer. Why not? There's lots of things you can do with this. I would suggest looking at page 119 of the Dungeon Master Guide with regard to, vehicles that travel around to different places very quickly. There's a little section on there. It's probably not enough. Okay, level 17, we need to be able to get your player character moving through the multiverse. Okay, so I need another drink of water. We're getting closer to the end. We're getting closer to the end. Your character gains a legendary magic item determined by the Dungeon Master at level 18. Now, I know you're thinking, hang on, I'm going to wait for a legendary magic item at level 18? I've got to wait that long? Seriously? What we're talking about here is you are essentially, to a large extent, having this built in. Now, a lot of Dungeon Masters, if they're running a low magic campaign, will say absolutely no to this. They will say no legendary magic item, maybe a magic item, yes, but not a legendary one. Some Dungeon Masters will say, at level 18, there's no way I'm letting you have any magic items. So I'm going to highlight the ideas behind this for you so that you can sell the idea to your Dungeon Master in an adequate way that gives you a better chance of making this work. Because at level 18, it really doesn't matter now. You're so powerful, it doesn't really matter if you get a magic item. You don't actually need the magic item, okay? But let's talk about this because there are some things that would be very, very interesting to do with this. This magic item is gifted to your character by a powerful patron. You've done them something, you've done them a favor, you've got a good relationship with them, and they've decided to give you this magic item. This is quite common within the tropes of traditional heroes, okay? Or even the heroine, is they often have a magic item of some kind, whatever it does. So maybe magic armor, maybe magic weapons, maybe just magic, whatever it is. Okay, so a powerful patron, a deity or god, or an entity. Somebody who has the ability to have access to these sorts of things and they can just gift it to you. Now, why do they gift it to you? You probably had to go on a quest, but we'll talk about that. There's also the option for some spell casting classes to craft the magic item at the Dungeon Master's discretion. So if the Dungeon Master thinks that you're a spellcaster, you can embed magic into something, and you have the ability to make a particular type of thing because you have proficiency in smithing tools or in leather making or whatever it might be, they might allow you to have, and this is a good time to talk about that, make the magic item yourself. Now the idea being that you'll need to have quite a lot of time to do this, so a lot of time will pass. And the other aspect to it is that you're probably not going to do not go and ask your Dungeon Master, I want to keep making magic items. At level 18, I want us to keep pumping them out. I'm going to fill up a warehouse. My players tried to do this in my own game. They had about 14, they had manufactured 14 bags of holding. And then one of them decided to share them out, and they stuck bags of holding inside bags of holding. And they were like, what happens, Fred? The world ended. Zoop. Gone. black hole, all of everything gets sucked in, and somebody decides, I'm going to cast Wish just before my character dies. And they had to turn back time because they balls things up. So I'm not saying that you make more than one magic item or that you get more than one magic item. I'm saying this is probably an appropriate time for that to be taking place, okay? Right. Now, if you're not crafting that magic item yourself because you're not a spellcaster, character classes could go on a quest for that magic item at the Dungeon Master's discretion, okay? Now, there is an aspect to this. This is the story element and story beat at this point. The adventure, your campaign now revolves around seeking out or finding the components to make magic items. That's your campaign story. That means that you might have to go to a far off place or another plane of existence to find a specialized magic item for your character. And all the characters in the party are probably going to be doing this sort of thing. Or they have to go and find the materials to make a specialized magic item. Okay? Or they need to go and do a favor for a god or a powerful entity, and the reward for doing that task is that magic item. That is the story that takes place at level 18. Those are the types of stories that take place there. Okay? So bear in mind that a legendary magic item doesn't need to have a combat function at all. It doesn't need to have a combat function at this level. Okay? Don't expect it. Don't demand it from the Dungeon Master. You don't need it. As a player, you really don't need magic weapons and magic armor at this level. You are so powerful that nothing is really going to stand up to you. Not in the monster manual. There's nothing in there that you can't deal with. Really? It's not a big deal. So if they say no to those sorts of things, if you can't get your +3 Vorpal sword, then don't freak out. But there's a lot of other magic items that can do things that change things completely, because you'll find at high level games, combat doesn't take up that much. Often you'll find that combats can get shut down by the banishment spell or other spells. Force cage. There's so many different spells and so many different abilities. You've got martial classes that are pumping out more than 100 points of damage on monsters and their foes. Your battle will probably not even take one round and it's over. That's how quick it is. It might take a long time to roll all the dice, but the battle itself logistically is probably only going to be one round, maybe a round and a half if you're lucky. So fights don't take that long. They get resolved very quickly. And often you'll find at high level, you're dealing with gods and powerful entities. You'll be doing a lot of negotiation. You'll be doing a lot of exploration and searching. Okay? A lot of convincing and persuading. This is really the top end game. It is probably far more role-play-y than dice rolling, okay, than anywhere else. This is the time when you're playing at high end where you really need to be using your brain, and you will be role-playing out the game much more than rolling dice. You wouldn't think it by looking at the character classes for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but seriously, that's the game that you're looking at. Okay, and there are so many awesome legendary items and magic items that do not have a combat focus that your Dungeon Master will probably say yes to. So please pursue that, okay? And always present it as, I can do a quest for this. It could look like many, and I've already said all the different things you could do with it. Let's get to the end, the last thing we need to discuss. Because I know, like most of these discussions that I put forward, it is often very difficult to get your head around. And I've been talking for almost an hour about a topic that you seriously, I don't even know how I would do an edited video on this. It would just be too difficult. Let's talk about the top end, the capstone. What is the capstone for a character class? What is the capstone for your campaign when you get to level 20? Your character can speak with a powerful being once a week for advice at level 20. Now I know you look at that and that just sounds like that's not nearly as good as everything else that you said and talked about, Fred. That's not nearly as good as everything else that was discussed, Fred. That sucks. I don't like that. Seriously, speaking with the gods, deities, powerful beings, ancient dragons, all that sort of stuff, that is the story at the top end. Because you are a big boy now, or a big girl. You are right at the pinnacle, the apex of the power of the whole universe. So we need to be talking with them. You need to be talking with gods. And it shouldn't be dependent on some spell that, sorry, God's not available today, you get put on hold. Not available, they're too busy right now. No, they're not too busy for you anymore. You're level 20, okay? You're potentially moving into godhood. You're not quite there, but you're certainly potentially moving into godhood. Okay, you're playing with the big boys and girls. The expectation is that player characters talk with their deity or god or powerful entity if they have one. So if you have a god or a deity and you've been worshipping them, that you now have a much closer relationship with them. If your character doesn't have a god or a deity, or if you don't have gods or deities in your game, then I would consider using something like an ancient dragon, legendary monsters. There's lots of legendary monsters. It could be a beholder, an aboleth. It could be some other creature. It could be a lich. There's lots of different things you could utilize as this is the powerful being or entity that I communicate with, depending on the character, okay? So, but legendary monsters, powerful patrons, and that covers pretty much a lot of different things, beings, entities, and pick the things that make sense for your character and make sense for your Dungeon Master's campaign, okay? Don't ever present something that falls just doesn't fit with it, because they will probably say no. Suggest the things that would make sense. This is why I'm giving you this in the first place. Now, this powerful being mentors your character in the realm, the world that you live in, or the multiverse, or both, okay? They are now your mentor. You are aspiring to be like them. They are basically working you towards godhood, or working you towards existing and dealing with the kinds of things that they deal with. You might be it's at this point that you are a major ally for them, okay? So they will help you with stuff. And information is key. Information is power. Information is life. So they will often give you the information you need that you can't get from the tavern, that you can't go and ask from some ancient wizard, because they just don't know. You can't go and get that information from some sort of library or archive, because that information's not there. That information is held by the gods. And they can also give you advice about how to deal with situations. You might say, look, I've got 3 choices here. I mean, what should I do with this this legendary magic item that's cursed? Should I destroy it? Should I keep it? Is there a way of removing the detrimental and world-ending aspects of it? How do I even destroy this thing? If there's this item that I need to absolutely destroy and eliminate because they're so difficult to get rid of, artifacts are so difficult to destroy, how do I do that? Do you know? You are going to ask your powerful entity or God, okay? Now, I know what you're thinking, for those of you who are discussing and right now about like, how useful is this to me? This is not the end of your campaign. Look, because characters can continue a campaign at level 20. You just keep playing at level 20. I know there aren't level 20, there's not 21, 22, 23. Don't worry about that stuff, okay? You don't need to keep getting levels to continue playing at high level. A lot of people set up their own structures for playing beyond level 20. That's why there are boons in the Dungeon Master Guide. But you don't even need to use them. You really, the idea is not to try and make your character so complicated that you can't understand how to use it. Okay? The idea is to get you to the point where you can play at the top end. right? So it's perfectly fine for your campaign to continue, and there are tables that exist like this at level 20, and you never gain another level, but you gain more information, you gain more stuff, and you perform more tasks, and you spread your legend in a way that you probably weren't able to do before. So you can continue doing it. You can continuing. It doesn't mean that when you get to 20, so we're going to get one or two adventures or one adventure, and that's the end of the campaign. No, it can keep going. All right, so there's something I need to just specify here, because I know that it's going to come up, and that is characters that don't multi-class work better in high-level campaigns. If you're playing a really high-level campaign, it is actually probably better not to multi-class. It's all right when you're playing from level 1 to 10 to multi-class, okay, because you're spreading yourself quite thin, but multi-classed characters often built exclusively for combat. Often when you multi-class, you're doing it exclusively for combat benefits. They will struggle with epic level roleplay games, because you'll find that being able to fight stuff is not the most useful thing. And actually, having the access to the right language, being able to talk to people, negotiate, persuade them, or just find stuff and achieve tasks. Okay? So a lot of that makes it much more difficult to achieve. And the top end capstone features, if you're going to continue using them in your character classes, they give you things that are much better than what the multi-classed characters would get. So look, seriously consider, if you're going to be playing beyond level 10, that you don't multi-class. Particularly at the very top end, you'll find it very difficult, because you'll lose out on things like Wish and Negate Spell if you want to use that, and True Resurrection and True Polymorph. Okay, a lot of those things are gone to you. Martial classes, it's not so much a big deal. It really isn't quite so much a big deal. Although, even if you look at a non-multi-classed character class that is martial, they're probably still going to get a lot more useful things than if you multi-class it. But again, they are all going to be very much combat focused. So, now, this was my attempt to explain to players what high-level Dungeons & Dragons looks like, or Dungeons & Dragons 5e can look like, and it's a discussion and a negotiation you're going to have with your Dungeon Master so that you finally get to play at a high level. This was my whole intention, okay? I've made videos for Dungeon Masters already, but this is when I'm making it for you as a player so you actually get to play at high level. And I think that, where is this? Here we go. There we go. I think this is going to probably make it possible for a lot of tables to actually make that happen. Now, I hope this was useful to you, and if it was, fantastic. Okay. Now, if you liked my content, I actually have hundreds of videos for players and Dungeon Masters covering every aspect of Dungeons & Dragons and Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I do have some videos explaining to Dungeon Masters how to run high-level games. I even have a video on explaining what playing a high-level character is like. Okay? What is it like? Giving you some examples. Okay? There's a video out there like that. If you like what I do, great. And you want to support the channel, you can through the Amazon affiliate link down in the description, the merchandise shelf underneath my video. Okay, all my videos have a merchandise shelf, or just watch my video. That's fine. Okay, do the usual YouTube things like share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Don't go. Don't go. I am still here, and I have no intentions of leaving just yet. We are going to talk about this. So, now that I've presented you with a lot of information, like probably far more than you were expecting to get, and God knows whether people will understand what I'm trying to do here, but I'm hoping that they do. And for Dungeon Masters who are feeling a little bit upset, look, don't feel upset. I am not trying to step on your toes. I really aren't. I'm just trying to educate players about some of the things that you need to deal with, okay, as a Dungeon Master playing at high level. I am not trying to upset you, Dungeon Masters. Okay, all right, here we go. Let's and for those of you who are players who are expecting me to give you a whole lot of stuff around combat at higher levels, combat features that were better than what was in the player's handbook, that was never my intention, because you've missed the point. Okay, you have completely missed the point of high level play. You really have. You don't have to believe me. You are welcome to disagree with me. Okay, right, so let's do some questions and answers though. Hashtag, where is it? Question. No, I'm not in a rush today because I do not have a Dungeon Master round table. So that means my voice is still holding up. I will stick another lozenge in my mouth so I can, and I will answer questions for you. How are we doing with our poll right now? I'm kind of curious. Oh, we got 42 people have voted. So let's have a look at our poll, and let's go through the chat. So this gives you an opportunity, please. You can ask me questions about the topic. You can ask me questions about anything related to Dungeons and Dragons. If you want to talk about politics and religion and music, that's probably not what I'm here for. But anything else that's related to Dungeons and Dragons and role-play games, absolutely. Let's do that. Absolutely. So start putting in your questions. Let's have a look at this poll. So my poll was, would you like to play in a high-level Dungeons & Dragons 5e campaign? And I've got here, now I don't know whether you're a Dungeon Master or a player who's answered this poll, it doesn't matter. You've said yes. 83% have said yes. 10% have said no. That's fine. That's all right. I would have liked to have moved you over to yes, but if I haven't been able to present a strong enough argument to you, to make it make sense for you to do it, then that's fine. That's all good. People are allowed to play the game they want to play, and if playing from level 1 to 10 is where you feel it needs to be, that's good. That's fine. That's all right. Now, 7%. Now, there's a very small amount already play high-level Dungeons and Dragons 5e. 7%. That 7%. Look, if you feel inclined to share with people in the chat what your games are like and whether I got it wrong or right, please comment. Please comment, because I think this is the time that people need to know. This video, this live stream will not get hidden. It will stay public. So people will have an opportunity to go through the comments and they can read your comments. So if you have something useful and important to say and you're still here when you answered that poll, please put it in. Okay? All right. 42 people. Now, if you are reluctant to answer the poll, that's fine, but I encourage you to do so. Okay, I'm going to do a lozenge, I'm going to do some water, and then we're going to go through the chat. Oh, I really didn't think it was going to take this long. I should know better. There is no such thing as no live stream can be too long. I should put a provisor. Fred, live streams, there is no such thing as a live stream that can't be longer than it was before. I know other people do much longer live streams than me, but here we go. So I've already said hi to Rivers RPG channel. Hi Rivers, mate. He's got a channel that you should check out. Okay, Overboard DM. Now that's Joe. Now Joe's got a YouTube channel as well. Deals with miniatures, terrain, reviews. He said no in the vote. That's fine, Joe. Big Kid. Now here we go. Here we go. Big Kid is sharing some information. In a game, we are level 20. And my issue is the baddies have such huge bonuses to their stats. It's hard to use spells with saving throws. Yes. Saving DC, saving throws. Yes. That is quite intentional, though. I think the problem is, Big Kid, at level 20, a lot of players assume that their go-to is to fight. And at high level, the go-to is not to fight. Mechanically, saves have already been a bit wacky. So in the past, you'll find that Most saving throws for monsters at low level are garbage. Okay, if a monster has an ability with a saving throw, they just don't work. It's just never works. You're finding your spells aren't going off because you have to hit such a high level for it to go off, so that the monster's got such high level saves. That's because they're legendary creatures and monsters and beasts, so they're not going to be taken down that way. You're going to have to think very differently. I think that's and look, if you're playing at level 20, Big Kid, I suspect that you've got quite a lot of experience already. I mean, from my discussions with you in the past, I got the impression that you've been playing the game a long time. But yes, I would suggest looking at different avenues. There are ways of changing things up so that they'll work for you. Okay. But yeah, spells can... what I can say about spells is sometimes it's better to cast a spell that doesn't actually have to contend with a saving throw. When you're dealing with a spell that just changes reality and does not necessarily directly affect a monster, but affects the environment around them, that's easier to achieve. Like Earthquake. Casting Earthquake is significantly easier than trying to target a monster with a spell. Steve, hi Steve. I have played in ones in the past, just not in 5th Ed edition. Yep. So Steve, you're the guy to let us know what it was like. You let me know if I got it wrong. If you've done it, I mean, I've done it. So let us know. Hello, Quinton. How's it going? Little comment for the logarithm. Yeah. I think people aren't commenting a lot because they're trying to listen to what I have to say. And I would imagine that a lot of people may be sort of in a position where they're just finishing work and they're driving somewhere. And so they can't be playing around and pushing buttons and so forth, but they're just listening on their phone or whatever as they drive home. Maybe that's what's going on, mate. But I do appreciate anybody who does comment. I've already said thank you to Foggy Bacon. Thank you for the super chat, $5. It was great. Ramiro, speaking on taking as long as you need, I know I enjoy all of the information. Okay, thank you very much. Now, somebody is Sandra Snow. You've put in the word Vark Tech. I don't know what that means. I don't know what Vark Tech means. What concerns me about Vark Tech is I did see it come up in somebody else's stream, and for me, when I see a comment like that, I'm like, what is going on there? Okay. Vark Tech might mean visual, audio, reading, and kinetic. I think that might be what's going on there, but I don't know exactly what's going on there. Learning styles. Yeah, okay. I thought it might be Vark Tech was related to that. If I'm wrong, people will let me know in the chat, and but yeah, I think Vark Tech is around visual, audio, reading, and kinetic. Okay, so Big Kid, thank you for the super chat of $10 again, mate. Justin, okay. Thanks for the information, Fred. My group has been discussing options for high-level game, so this was awesome. So, Justin, this video is targeted at your players. If you can get them to watch the live stream, great. Okay? If you can't, you can't. But I go over everything that you probably want to discuss with them anyway. And I realized when I was doing this that if I made another video that was targeted Dungeon Masters, only the Dungeon Masters watch the video on the high-level game. But if you make a video that's targeted at players and explaining to them what high-level games are like, then they're more likely to watch it. Dungeon Masters watch everything as it is, okay? If you're watching YouTube for Dungeons and Dragons stuff, you're probably watching everything anyway. But it's getting the players to watch the right videos, right? Otherwise, the only thing they're watching is the character class spells videos, and that's it. And maybe some of the lore stuff. Thank you, Global Product and Gaming Review, for the $5 super chat. I do appreciate it. Okay, so Global Product and Gaming Review. Is this a company? I'm not too sure. Okay, so let's have a look. May I, and if so, how can I hire you to run a campaign for me? Please advise, and thank you for the informational videos. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. Look, people have talked about this before with me. I'm not for sale as a dungeon master. It's not because I necessarily don't want to do it. The reason I don't want, I just can't do it. I just do not have the time. It's just not practical. I have a full-time job and I run this YouTube channel, and so for me, it's never going to happen. Now, Global Product and Gaming Review. If you're looking to hire somebody to run high-level games, I just don't know that there's anybody out there who specifically will do it. Not without charging an arm and a tooth. So yeah, I do apologize that that's just not possible. It's just impractical in my situation. Okay. JT and D&D. I have one shot tomorrow using the Hand of Vecna help. I need advice. Okay, well, ask your question. What help do you need with the Hand of Vecna if you've got a one shot tomorrow that you're dealing with? Yeah, I have a home campaign. I only have one campaign, and I'm a player in that campaign right now rather than a dungeon master. I don't really have time to do anything else. My home group play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons over the years, and we take turns. And currently it's my turn not to dungeon master and my turn to be a player. And I don't run a lot of campaigns because I'm not full-time. The full-timers often will run games for people, and so you can go and you can request a high-level campaign or a game that they would run for you. But I'm just not that type of YouTuber. And yes, I have tried to show people how I run games in the past, but frankly, I think you're better off to just go and watch Critical Role. Just go watch Critical Role. Now, can I even pronounce this name? Ingord Ninja Master. Having a good laugh there? Good. All right. I'm not sure what you were laughing at, but you'll let me know. So it doesn't look like I've got too many questions coming through, but that's all right. Hello, Nick. How's it going? I've never been a player in a high-level play game, right? I've always been a DM who has got my players to around levels 11 to 15. Yeah, that's quite common. And do you know, a lot of people say the reason there aren't high-level games is there's no adventures for high-level games. But the reality is, at high level, you can't have pre-made adventures at high level. It's counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. So don't beat up on publishers who don't make campaigns for high-level games. That's my. The reality is that because your players are so instrumental and they initiate everything, you have to improvise and you have to homebrew, or you have to pinch and steal stuff from existing books if you don't have time to do it yourself, and port it over into your own campaign. So this is a very common thing to do, and that is to take adventures or locations and build a story around it that will work with your group of players. So it is asking a lot. So it does mean at this point, you know, if you're heading beyond level 10 as a dungeon master, you're looking at homebrew Dungeons and Dragons. You really are. You're looking at homebrew Dungeons and Dragons. How do you prep stuff for a high-level game? My God, that's a good question. Okay, we'll get to that, Archer's Fiend. I absolutely love your stuff and use your advice all the time. Thank you. From Missouri, USA. You're welcome. Big Kid, if you won't run a game, would you consider playing in a one-shot? I just don't have time. I mean, look, so one of the things I try to do, and you may be aware, I have my own video content that I make for my channel. This is the live streams and some of the edited videos, which are usually built around the content from the live streams, but in a shorter format for those people who don't like the live stream stuff. But I do the live stream stuff and I keep it public because 90% of my subscribers like that. Okay? Hi, Stan. I'll get to you in a second. So with that in mind, I started this Dungeon Master Roundtable, and it takes up all of the rest of my time. All the rest of my time is gone. Sometimes it chews up time that I had set aside for my own channel, which is problematic. And it's been detrimental at times to my channel. So, but bringing the community of Dungeons and Dragons RPG YouTubers and, you know, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or RPGs on YouTube, bringing those collaborators and creators together and collaborating with them and doing the Dungeon Master Roundtable stuff, okay, is at the top end of my priorities, because it means that we get to interact with each other. Most of us don't know each other until just recently, the last year or so. I mean, I'd never met AJ Pickett till we started doing this. I never met Josiah from Dungeon Dad. I'd never met Jordan, PH the Silent. I never met was it Mr. X? No, I don't think I don't think I've met Mr. X. No, it wasn't Mr. X. There was somebody else as well, and I just, on the tip of my tongue, I can't remember who it was. I'd never met. Oh gosh, who is it? So many of the YouTubers that have appeared in these videos that I've done with them. And we get a chance to really pull apart topics in a way that we've never done before, and to present multiple perspectives. And I feel like that's so much more useful to you. So much more useful to you. And the Dungeon Master Roundtable we're going to pull in people who do stuff for players. And we're going to start doing stuff that talks about stuff that players are probably more interested in. That's coming in the future, for sure. And I feel like that is a much better use of my time. And I don't want to give that up. And I don't think anybody, because I've discovered that apparently I'm the only one who seems to be able to pull it off. Isn't it weird that I'm the one who manages to pull it off, but the rest of them, who are much bigger than me in some cases, struggle with this sort of thing? Trust me, getting 4 people from 4 different places in the world in different time zones is really difficult. I want that to continue. Trust me, man, the stuff that's coming is just gold. All right. Now, somebody talked about how do you prep for a high level stuff. You need to have maps of locations that make sense for what the players' characters want to go and do. So, I got some books. They finally arrived. You want a lot of NPCs, and a lot of non-player characters, right? That you can drop into your campaign whenever you like. Now, if you had a book that was full of non-player characters, that would be super useful, wouldn't it? Well, there is a book. The Game Master's book of non-player characters arrived on my doorstep. Is it a perfect product? No. But products that do something like this, if you're not making your own, just a whole lot of different player characters. Super, super useful to you. This is the sort of stuff at high level that you definitely want to have. Researching gods that your player characters are going to interact with, you want to have a bit of information around that. Now, dungeon lairs, like monster lairs, lairs for gods, maps, having the right sorts of maps available. Now, if you can get a map that has all the information about what is in that location, if you don't want to create it yourself, that's super useful too. Now, I believe that there's something like that in Volo's Guide to Monsters, but other books have it. Look, Fantastic Locations by Sly Flourish, another way of doing it. I will do a book review on, the Game Master's book of non-player characters. I don't know when, but I will get to it. I had Fizzban's Treasury of Dragons show up. One of the great things I noticed about this book, and also the Theros, Mythic Odysseys of Theros, is there's a whole lot of locations that give you information about how to build an adventure around that location, and it gives you maps. So you don't have to draw them yourself. You pick the locations that are going to work for your campaign. The places that your players are asking to go. So that's how you prepare for them. Okay? If they don't go there and don't use it, then you'll use it some other time. Chances are you can use it again. This is full of maps of dragon lairs, like high-level dragons, ancient dragons. It gives you a lot of information on that location. It gives you adventure hooks. It is not a perfect product by any means. I will do a book review in the future on this, okay? I have a lot to say about this book, and frankly, there's some really awesome things in here. Yes, there's some player stuff in here as well, and there's a lot of Dungeon Master stuff in here. But there are things in here that are so useful for high-level games. So we're going to have to talk about it, aren't we? I'll do a review specifically on that book at some point. And not really high-level play. This is like your level 1 to 10 thing. This is the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. When I get around to deciding how to deal with this thing, I'll do a video on it. But right now, I'm not going to. But the things you want: maps, NPCs, information on some of the more useful information around the gods, so that you have something you can give to them. Because your player characters are going to be talking with powerful entities and gods, you kind of have to have some information around that, right? And then you will have to look through the magic item section, I think, even if it isn't to give out magic items to your players, but to give magic items to the villains that they use. Magic items play a part, unless if you've got a campaign that doesn't use magic items. So those are lots of the things that you're looking at needing to explore. Now, we need to talk about monsters. Monsters in the monster manual at high level really aren't going to cut it. You are going to have to go to Kobold Press or some of the third-party publisher, like Tome of Beasts 2, the Creature Codex. A lot of those books have monsters that are far more dangerous and more useful to you. But again, I found at high level for Dungeons and Dragons 5e that I had to remake a lot of monsters. It means you will have to take what was there and readjust it, a lot of it. Usually with high level games, and I find this happens quite often, it doesn't matter what you do, you find yourself having to max out the hit points on monsters, or even give them more than that. You have to give them more damage. They just don't do enough damage. It's not enough to have just 3 legendary actions. You've got to have a legendary action at the end of every player's turn, because some of these characters are pumping out more than 100 points of damage. Some of them, what happens when you've got a wizard throwing down with Meteor Swarm? I've used Meteor Swarm on my players' characters, and they have not died at high level. They might have dropped to 0 hit points if they were a wizard, but to kill them outright, it just doesn't happen. Okay, so a lot of the things you're going to have to adjust. So monsters in particular, so monster damage output, give them more legendary actions than they have, because what they often get is too confining. So a lot of that is build your own monsters or adjust your own monsters and beef them up. Don't be too worried about how bad they are, because even the worst case scenario, to give you an example, I threw my party up against a Titan that did it had a close quarter attack and a ranged attack, and it did about 100 points of damage on every single attack. They were playing at about level 18 or 19, and they couldn't kill the Titan. It had like 800 hit points, and it was so dangerous. The battle took between 1.5 and 2.5 rounds. 2 of the characters went down. The other 3 bamfed out of there using, I think it was Dimension Door or Teleport or something like that, or Gate. I can't remember exactly what it was. But they got out. They achieved the goal that they needed to. They didn't worry about the Titan because they realised they were out of their league and that they were dealing with something that could... And it would do... it would have its turn. And once it had its turn, it would take another action at the end of everybody's turn as a legendary action. And it's pumping out another 100 points. Now you might be thinking, well, gosh, that's way too much. They still did not die. I was dealing with experienced players though. Okay? They still did not die. They thought they were. They thought they were going to get taken out, but they did not go down. Okay? So kid gloves are off, mate. It's all on when it comes to when you have combat. Don't even bother with the low level nonsense at high level. It's a waste of your time. It's tedious. Okay? Just select if you're going to have a fight or a battle at high level, pick the climactic battles that you want. Pick the pinnacle, the major bosses. That's what you're after. Everybody else, they're going to trick, persuade, negotiate with, or generally just squash otherwise. Okay? So don't worry about that sort of thing. So I don't know if that gave you enough information about how to prepare for high level stuff, but if I need to, you guys will let me know in the comments section and I'll do a video on it if I have to. All right, Stan. Hello, Stan. Hi, Fred. Hope you are well. I'm a lot better than I was. Thank you. Just joined, and sorry if it was asked already. What's your advice for starting magic items for your player characters in a high-level game? Thanks. Okay. Well, depending on what they're dealing with, you can give them a magic weapon and they'll be quite happy. But I find that, monks don't really need it. Paladins don't need it because they've got their smites. Radiant damage gets through most things. Paladins can cast magic weapon. There are spellcasters who can cast magic weapon on a martial character's class, and they've got a magic weapon. Okay, so you don't have to give them magic weapons. What is good is the stuff that changes the reality of their world, because one of the problems you have at high level when you're playing as a player in a high level game is trying to contend with the fact that you're dealing with things that change the very nature and fabric of the world and other creatures. You're dealing with a problem where the NPC or the ally that you're trying to talk to has been transformed into something that you can't communicate with. Now, I guess my best example that I could use, if you watch the Willow movie, in the movie Willow, there's a sorcerer, a witch, who's been transformed by, is it Bad Mortar, into a crow, and she lives on this island. Okay, well, now I need some way of transforming and changing the nature of that person because they've been permanently transformed into this. So I need to be able to transform her back. Now, either you have access to the right sort of spells to do that, or you have an item that allows you to do that. Sometimes it's useful to have items that can change how time works and how the worlds work. If you travel to the plane of fire, how do high level characters survive in the plane of fire? They can't, unless maybe they have a magic item that can do that allows them to do that. And it might be simply like a vehicle that can travel through the plane of fire or the plane of water or the plane of air or whatever it might be. How do you survive in the abyss? How is that possible? How do you go down to the lower levels of hell without burning alive? Because some of the environments are so nasty. It's the environments that your player characters have to interact with sometimes are so difficult to deal with that they can't survive there. So they need help, and magic items are a really good way of dealing with that because there's not always the spells there to do what you need to. Yeah? So that's what I suggest to you. Look at the utility stuff. Really, your players will find more use out of a lot of the utility magic items rather than armor and weapons. Although often players, their first go-to is armor and weapons rather than the other stuff. okay, as a dungeon master. If you're a player and you're still here and you want to play at high level, what you'd want to do, and you're much more likely to get out of your dungeon master, is utility magic items than combat magic items. Ask for that sort of stuff, okay? Seriously, at high level, okay, is going to be much more useful to you. Big Kid, are there any things you ban from high level play so game doesn't get broken? You mentioned the bags of holding and letting that go through. No, at high level, everything goes. Everything goes. And yes, stupid things will happen. Look, if it came up again and my players wound up putting bags of holding inside of other bags of holding and, causing a singularity and the world being sucked into it, would I stop them doing that? No, I would laugh. And I'm sure a lot of the players would be sitting there and laughing too. There'll be a few players who are like, oh no, oh, what are we supposed to do? But I thought it was wonderful that somebody said, okay, well, actually I have a 9th level spell. I could cast Wish. Can I cast Wish before we all get sucked into the singularity and the world ends? And I said, yes. It's magic and things that change the reality of the world that really make a big difference at high level. And no, I wouldn't ban anything at high level. Absolutely not. That means that the kinds of magic, you can make magic items that are stupid crazy and do all sorts of weird things. But monsters, there's no limit to how mad and crazy your monsters can be and the beasties that you create. My advice to you is not to throw stat blocks together for gods. It's not a good idea. Some people do this, but I would discourage it. You've got to make it clear to players that there is a ceiling for them. That there are certain individuals that they cannot contend with. But they can interfere with them. Player characters at high level can interfere with the gods and really powerful entities. They can screw with their plans and balls things up for them. And that's exactly what we want them to do. Okay? Big Kid's going to keep a seat open for me. Thank you. Here we go. Fred Gomes. Lots of good info here. I have to watch this more than once. Yeah, well, look, I totally understand, Fred. There's a lot. I put so much information in here. Look, what I will do, and you guys will let me know if it's the right thing to do, is I can go over guilds. I can talk about guilds in more detail if you like. I can talk about followers. These are the unpaid followers and how they would work a bit more in the game. I can talk about mounts, land mounts, flying mounts. I can talk about strongholds. I've already done a lot of stuff on strongholds, but maybe I could do more. I'm not too sure how I would go about doing that. Those are topics I can talk about. Okay, I can even talk about, how do you deal with talking with gods? I don't know that it would get a lot of traffic, those videos, but if people feel that there's something worthwhile, then I may change my mind. Seriously, I may change my mind. I often do. I say, oh no, I won't do that, and then I do. So it happens. Archer's Field, that helped a ton. I agree on the Tome of Beasts. I'm glad. Even the Tome of Beasts. A lot of the very first Tome of Beasts, I love, because the stuff is just ruthless. Ruthless. It's perfect for high level. Ruthless. The Tome of Beasts 2 is a bit more tamed down, unfortunately, and I would say the Creature Codex is a bit more tame. So you will still probably have to change a few things. You'd be surprised what high-level characters can contend with. Okay. All right. I think we've covered everything. So unless you have... Oh, hang on. Hi, David. I quit like a new YouTube... I quit like the new YouTube vote poll system. I quite like the new YouTube vote poll system. Look, David, I really didn't understand this. So I don't know if anybody knows John Campier. He does stuff on movies, TV series, and he does a live stream. He cuts up his live stream into videos, and he does a lot of polls on his channel. And when I saw him doing this, I was like, Why did I not notice that button? Why did I not use it? I think it's brilliant. I love it. And David, you have reminded me that I need to close the poll. So I will close the poll at this point. We have got final numbers, and I feel like I have shifted a few people who said no to yes, and that's good. That's a good sign. Got to try everything at least once or twice. Whoops. John. Hi, John. I'd love a video with topics like how to talk with gods. Okay, John said it. So what I'm going to do... pardon me. I don't know what I've done there. I'm just going to process all of this because there's been a lot to sort of discuss today. Hopefully you guys will get everything out of this that you need to. Make sure, if you're a dungeon master, that you put this in front of your players so that they know what they can do and what they can't do and how they will need to negotiate with you about playing at high level. So, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.